What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I just wanted to shoot a quick video. I'm going to do two. The first one will be some things that I'm not a fan of, or things you need to consider if you're looking at buying one of these FTX-1s, either the Optima or the Field. I've got the Optima version here, so we've got the amp on it. I've run it both as the Field version and the Optima version. I have not had it out to do an activation yet. My intention is to do that tomorrow. It has done nothing but pour rain here for weeks. And on top of that, we've had crazy geomagnetic storming. So radio was kind of out of the question. But I've used it a lot here in the shack. I haven't used it as my sole radio, and I'm going to talk about why in a minute. But I've used it quite a bit. And so I've drawn some conclusions about certain things that I like and certain things that I don't like. Now, please keep in mind, these are my observations based on how I use a radio. All right, so I'm primarily a CW operator. So that's, yes, I do have the mic hooked up, and yes, I have used it for phone as well. In fact, you'll see right now I've got it on the 2-meter calling frequency on one of my local repeaters. I haven't done any digital with this radio. Right? I don't do a lot of digital. When I do, I'm using my FTX-10. I've never tried to do digital on this. I know that the CAT commands aren't quite ready for prime time yet. So if you are a digital operator, your complaints are going to be different than mine. But I'm coming at this from somebody who I've had this for a couple of weeks. I've used it quite a bit, and like I said, I'm going to do two videos. I'm going to do this one, which are some things that I think you need to consider if you're thinking about buying one of these, and then I'll do another video about things that I kind of like about it, and you know, some of the features that I think are important. Let me start right up front that this thing does run hot. Okay, now I don't know how hot it's currently running. I've had it on receive here. It's been on for hours. I've worked CW. I've worked single sideband. I've done some FM. It is hot. I was going to bring my infrared temperature gun home from work and measure it, but I forgot to do it. But it's warm. It's not super hot, but it's warm to the touch. So it does run warm. Now, it runs hotter with the amp on or with the battery pack on because they act sort of as an insulator. Right? If this radio is just hooked up to a 12-volt power supply with the field head, it can dissipate heat faster because it doesn't have that insulation. Right now, that amp is holding heat into the back of this radio. The hottest part of the radio is the back, or the battery does the same thing. So it does run warm, and I think that's probably why they have the fan for FT8. Again, I haven't tried to run this on digital modes yet, so I have no idea how hot it's going to get. But it does run warm, so that is something to consider. Now, I'm going to touch on something that this is the reason I haven't used this as my primary radio. My intention was I was going to run this thing for a week or two as my primary radio, and then give it a thorough sort of review. But the tuner in this Optima unit, it's got an internal tuner. I've had people argue with me, there's no tuner in this thing. I assure you there is. And well, you'll see when we go into the menu that the tuner, all the tuner commands are in there. But it's not very wide. Okay, it's not even as good as the FTX-10s is. And I can't tune anything south of the phone portion of the 40-meter band on this radio on the antenna that I have in my house. So it's a Palomar 9-to-1 with a 71-foot wire, 50 feet of coax. I don't have a counterpoise on it. I might get up on a ladder and throw one on it and see if that makes any difference. But it will not tune anything south of like 7.175. All right, anything from the extra portion of the phone band down into the CW band on 40 or south. So it won't tune 60, it won't tune 80. All right, from the phone portion, the general phone portion of 40 meters and up, this tuner handles it on this antenna, no problem. Now, again, it's a compromised antenna, right? It's not a resonant antenna, hence the tuner. But the tuner in this just isn't wide enough to get anything south of that. So that is why I have not used it as my primary radio for the past couple weeks and given it a good shakedown. I use 40 meters as my primary band. And on this antenna, this just won't tune CW on 40 meters. And that's my bread and butter band. So the DX10's been seeing more use for that just because it'll tune this antenna on 40 meters. So, like I said, that's something that's probably so far my biggest complaint with the Optima unit is that the tuner is not super wide. Okay, it works fine, it's quick enough. It just isn't super wide. The menu structure on this radio is a little more convoluted than it is on, let's say, the DX10 or the 710. It's not as bad as an 891 or 818 or an 817 or an 857 or something like that. But it is not as easy to use as the FTX-10. All right, so on the FTX-10, you just push the function button and then you select what you want to do. You've seen me do it in another video where I compared, Yaesu's menu structure versus ICOM's. This one's a little more convoluted. You got to press and hold the function button. All right. And then you've got multiple pages of settings. So page 1 is like your single sideband settings. Page 2 is your CW settings. Page 3 is like your FM, C4 FM settings. All right. And like when I want to use the tuner, I've got to come into this menu and turn the tuner on. You can see it's off and I can't tune the antenna because I'm currently on, this is on the single sideband stuff. This won't tune the 2-meter antenna. And if I switch this over to, let me do that. Let me switch this over to HF. So we'll do that and then we'll go back in. So now you can see we've got our antenna tuner. So if I want to turn the antenna tuner on, I have to come in here, turn it on. Then you've either got to wait for this icon to disappear or hit back. Then you got to come over. Oh, that's the attenuator, sorry. Tuner's on. Okay, so then we got to come over here and we got to hit antenna tune and it will tune up. Now I can leave the function knob set to antenna tune. So if I want to tune it, I can just push that button, but then I can't use it for anything else, right? I got to go back into the menu and change that if I want to. And I leave that on CW speed all the time. So if I need to tune the radio up, I have to go into the menus, come in here, hit antenna tune. Kind of a pain in the butt. All right. Like I said, turn that down. Like I said, the menu structure is big in this. So I don't know why that shouldn't be on. I don't know why the amp was on, but like I said, this is a pretty big menu system. So, you know, this is, like I said, this is all your SSB stuff, all your CW stuff, all your FM stuff. Now, one of the things that people have had a hard time with is the way Yaesu does their other settings. All right, so the commonly used things are on these 3 pages, okay? The deeper dive stuff, so like radio settings for single sideband, AM, FM, data, all those things are in here. So if you want to change any of your sound profiles, anything like that, you can do that from in here. And you can see I don't have mine set to stock. And these are not, anything that's not yellow is not stock. So like that's not a default. So if I go into CW, most of this stuff I think I still have set as default with the exception of a few things. So you can see I've changed the treble into mids. But if you're not used to how Yaesu does their menus, all their deeper stuff is going to be down here. But like I said, this one's a little harder because I leave my FTX-10, I leave on CW speed all the time. And then if I need to change something, I can just come in and poke buttons real quick. This one, it's not as quick to come in and poke buttons. All right, I have to come in and scroll through menus. Another thing that I don't like is if you want a 0 beat, I have to come in here and hit it from the menu. I can't, there's a separate button on the FTX-10. I don't do that often, but if you use that, that's in there, okay? So like I said, the menu structure is not quite as intuitive. I know Yaesu's menu structure generally isn't as intuitive as some other manufacturers. I don't find it very hard to use because I use the Yaesu radios so much. But this one is a little more involved than others because this radio does so many things. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, while I'm in here, one thing that people have had a hard time with is when they use this scrolling wheel to scroll through. All right, if they scroll fast, sometimes it will go like entire pages. These knobs are not linear. So the faster you spin them, the faster things move. So for instance, if I come out of here and we look at, so right now we're on volume. So if I turn it slowly, oh no, sorry, that's my function button, my function knob. So if you watch my volume right here, let me put this just on the singular VFO. So if you watch the volume slider right here, if I turn it, it's going to come slowly, but if I whip it, okay, see how, if I turn it fast, see what happens? But if I turn it slow, I can do it incrementally. So these are not linear. Okay, so that's been causing people some problems, and it's just the way they work. It's so you don't have to sit here and turn and turn and turn. If I want to turn the volume up or down real quick, right, I can just whip that knob and turn it up and down real fast. So that is something you need to get used to. All right, but it has caused some people some issues. If you are a CW operator, as I am, there is a little bit of, I don't know if it's popping. It's hard to describe. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it on camera, but there's a little bit of a pop when you send it. I don't find it distracting at all. Some people it's going to drive crazy. My FX4CR did that too, but it was much more pronounced. And I have the monitor, the side tone level down, so that if you turn the side tone level up, you don't notice that popping as much. I have it down. I leave it around 20. I don't want to drive people nuts here in the house. I generally don't wear headphones, and I don't want to drive my wife and my daughter crazy. So I leave my side tone fairly low, and it's more pronounced when the side tone is low. So if you are a CW operator and that's something that's going to drive you crazy, keep that in mind. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. I don't have an issue with it, but some people may. Now, the receiver sensitivity on this radio is not as sensitive as people would have liked, including me. It's not bad. It's nowhere near as good as my FTX-10. I would say it's probably on par with the 705 in that aspect. I know Sherwood ranked it was like 34th or something. But his rankings don't always mimic my real world experiences. So like, for instance, the TX500 on his rankings is way lower than the KX2. I find the TX500 receiver to be, at least mine, more sensitive than my KX2. I can hear things on the TX500 I can't hear on the KX2. So I take lab results with a grain of salt, use your own ears, but it is nowhere near as sensitive as an FTX-10 or even a 710. I don't know why, and I don't know if that's something that's fixable or if that's just the way this radio is. It's plenty good for what I'm going to use the radio for. If I'm trying to do really weak signal stuff, this probably isn't the radio I would pick. But for most of the stuff that I do, it's more than good enough. It's on par with the KX2. It is missing some features, right? So I know you've seen. Let me switch that back over to FM so we're not hearing that howling in the background. It is missing some features, right? So APRS, you've seen Jason Cam4ACK, his issues with the APRS on this. I use APRS some, but I haven't really used it on this radio yet. But I know like sending messages isn't really an option right now on these. And I know the receive, it doesn't decode as well as like the FT5 does. And I tried it and it doesn't. Again, not a huge deal for me because I'm probably not going to use APRS that much on this radio. That wasn't ever my intended use case. I use APRS when I'm out in the field hiking around. I might use it. That's probably not how I'm going to use this radio. But if you're a big APRS user, you might be disappointed until Yaesu can get the firmware completely implemented. We know Wires X is coming. I don't use Wires X. I've never used Wires X. I own multiple radios with it. I've never used it. But I know that is a feature that they have coming, but there are some features that are missing from the radio. So again, that's something that Yaesu probably shouldn't have done. They probably shouldn't have put out a radio with missing features, or they either should have said, hey, these features are coming, as opposed to just omitting them on the radio, but having spots for them. Or they could have not included them at all and done like what Google does with Pixels. They'll do feature drops, where they'll implement new features, they'll drop them in a firmware update, you get a whole bunch of new features. If they'd done that and they started dropping new features, let's say once a quarter, that'd be awesome. Hey, your radio just got some cool new features that it didn't have before. I don't think they handled that one particularly well. All right, so, take that or leave that for what it is, but it is missing some features. And the last thing I will say is that, and I knew this going in, if you buy this radio right now, you are going to be a beta tester. All right. For better or worse, whether you agree with that's how it should be or not, you're going to be. And I agree that shouldn't be the case, but I knew that going in. I own a pile of radios. This is not my only radio. I can deal with the bugs and the quirks and the weirdness until everything gets ironed out. If this was going to be your only radio, I would say hold off. Don't buy one of these right now. There's too many features that are missing. There are too many things that don't work right. There's going to be too many bugs. If you're not comfortable doing firmware updates, this is definitely not a radio for you. And the first firmware update doesn't just do firmware, it also updates the bootloader. So if you're not comfortable doing that, again, probably not the radio for you. All right. If you're somebody who doesn't want to have to worry about bugs and firmware updates and all of those things, maybe give it 6 months to a year. I have the feeling that once this matures, this is going to be a cool radio. I think it's a cool radio, but it does have some problems, okay? And I know that people are going to give Yaesu grief for it, and rightfully so, but I do think Yaesu's done a fairly good job of handling those. Every time I've contacted Yaesu with an issue, Roger, one of their engineers, or I think that's what he does, has gotten back to me within like a business day and said, hey, okay, we've acknowledged this issue. I'll pass it along to the field engineers, what have you. They've done a really good job of being very proactive with working with people on the bugs. And it's not just a form letter. It's an actual email from an actual human being. You can call them and talk to an actual human being about it too. So I think they've done a good job on that end. But I do think they rushed it to market. I do think they were trying to hit a time frame, right? I think they wanted to get it out by Hamvention, and I think they pushed it out prematurely. I don't think it was quite ready for prime time, but they said we want to get it out by Hamvention, and so we got the radio we got. I think that the amp was an afterthought. I think it's a cool afterthought, and I think it's going to be a really beneficial component to this radio, but I think that some of the bugs that we've seen relate directly to the fact that that was, I think, a late addition to the game. I know people were having issues with it dropping transmit, especially on 40 meters. I don't know if that's fixed with the firmware update. I never had that issue on phone or CW. I had like a 10 or 15 minute long CW rag chew on 40 meters before I did the firmware update. Never had an issue. But understand that you may be a beta tester. If you buy this radio right now, you are going to be, for better or worse, a beta tester. A couple of things I just want to touch on before I cut this one. I want this to be a fairly short video. Like I said, I'll shoot another video on the things that I really like about this radio because there are a lot of features that I think are really cool. There are a couple things that I just want to get out there. It does not need a 45 watt charger to charge. All right, I have a 45 watt laptop charger here, which works great. I also have a 30 watt PD wall wart that came with one of my Google Pixel phones. That charges the battery no problem too. Will it be a little slower? Probably. Absolutely charges the battery. And we're talking about charging the field battery with the USB port on the battery. All right. It will charge from the 12 volt jack on the back. So if you've got the field head with the battery attached and you attach your 12 volt cable to it, it will charge the internal battery. It'll do it from a solar panel and a charge controller too. Okay, so this right here is a 13.8 volt Pro Audio Engineering power supply, QRP power supply. I plug it in, that LED turns red and it charges the battery. So if you're charging the battery out of the radio, it does need to be a USB PD charger. It does not need to be a big 45 watt laptop charger. All right, but it does need to be power delivery, and it will charge from the 12 volt jack on the back using a standard, like I said, I've charged it with this power supply. So I just wanted to throw that out there. The last thing I will say is I've seen people have issues trying to hook HT antennas to this. I'm not going to name any names, but I've seen several people who've had problems both with charging and with HT antennas. The HT antenna thing, it works perfectly fine. If you hook a 90-degree BNC adapter to the UHF, VHF, BNC on the back of this thing and you put like a 2 meter half wave antenna on it, 1-to-1 SWR. If you put a signal stick on it and run a counterpoise, like a 17 to 19 inch grounder, 17 to 19 inch grounder counterpoise from the ground lug on the back of this radio, again, you're like a 1-to-1 SWR. So it will work. You just need to have you either need to have a full half wave antenna, or you need to have the other half of the antenna, right? A signal stick's only a quarter wave. You got to have that other side of the antenna. So if you run a counterpoise off the ground lug on the back of this radio, it works great. That works on the 705 too. So if you've got it a 705, throw a 90-degree BNC on it, stick a signal stick on it, and throw a counterpoise on the ground. There's a ground lug on the side of the 705. It's on the back of this radio. It'll work no problem. So like I said, those were just some things I wanted to point out. There may be more things that I find as I use this radio more, but those are my initial impressions as far as things that I don't like. And I wanted to get the things I don't like out first, because if people are considering buying this radio, I want them to know those things up front. If you got any questions or comments, go ahead and feel free to leave them in the comments below. Please keep the comments civil. All right. I try to respond to every comment, whether it's positive or negative. But if you're just a complete jackwagon about it, I'm probably not going to answer you. But if it's constructive criticism, I'll take it. If it's positive, I'll take it. If you have questions, by all means, ask them. I will do my best to answer them. And if I don't know the answer, I will try to find them for you. All right, folks. So we're right at about 20 minutes. I think I'm going to cut this one here. I really do appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for the support. And until next time, oh, wow, I just fumbled that one. Let's try that again. And until next time, as always, 7-3.